record by getting his 69th rabbit tattoo.
Tony Kornheiser, okay. But I still hold the record for armadillos, right? I've still got that.
I mean, to call, everybody wants to have a record every day. Every household in America thinks they have to have a record. If they don't talk about records, what would they talk about? They can't even talk about homework or family. Record.
Have you seen an armadillo? They're among the weirdest looking animals.
Yeah.
They are so weird looking.
Not as bad as
Welcome to PTI, boys and girls. In today's episode, the A-Sun Conference tournament delivers. Shohei goes 0 for 3, and Jay Billis joins us for 5 good minutes. But we begin today with a what's the word on the Boston Celtics. They gave up a 22-point lead last night in the fourth quarter to Cleveland and lost. They shot 0 for 8 from 3 in that quarter. And in that quarter, they were outscored by a little-used forward named Dean Wade, who scored 20 by himself, including the game winner. And that stopped Boston's win streak at 11 games. Wilbon, what's the word for all this?
Bored. The Celtics were bored. And, Tony, I know that nobody wants to hear about history because everybody wants to have a record that day in their lives. But this goes on in the NBA even with the greatest teams. Because the greatest team, at least by record, the 96 Bulls, they did exactly this. I'm watching this game last night, Tone. I turned off up 22 points for the Celtics because I'm bored. And Matthew comes in the room later and says, why are you not watching the Celtics? I'm like, because they're up 22. Get a life. He's like, they're not up 22. Turn the damn game back on. And there's some dude named D. Wade being interviewed. Unbelievable. The Bulls of 96, Michael Jordan's team, Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Phil Jackson, that team, Steve Kerr. Tone, they lost to expansion Toronto and expansion Charlotte, both on the way to 72-win season. It's going to happen again to the Celtics, Tone. These Celtics will lose again like this, maybe even next week. You can't concentrate like people want them to for 5 or 6 straight weeks, and that's how much time is left in the regular season. Not going to happen. Bored.
I honestly didn't know who Dean Wade was. And then I found out he's 6'9", and in his 5th year in the league, he plays about 20 minutes a game, averages 5 points, and then he goes for 20 alone in the fourth quarter, and he hits 5 threes. So I learned a lot about him. I also learned that last night was Kelsey Brothers bobblehead night, that Jason and Travis Kelsey were there because apparently they were born and raised in the Cleveland area, which I didn't know. I'm assuming that Taylor Swift wasn't there, or else we'd have known that, and the ratings would have been off the charts. If I had to pick a word, Mike, my word would be lost, because Boston lost, and I was lost, because I'd never heard of Dean Wade. If we were talking about Dean Vernon Wormer from Animal House, I'd have been better off. The exciting thing to me in that game, Mike, was they reversed the call at the end.
Yes.
So Boston didn't get a chance to go to the line, and didn't get a chance to win. That's what should have happened a couple of weeks ago with Jalen Brunson. But Cleveland had a challenge, and the Knicks didn't. Mike, the league ought to say a game-changing play in the last 5 to 10 seconds is reviewable. Challenge or no challenge, it's reviewable.
Yeah, I remember we talked about that, and I said go out to a minute. But you know what? I mean, imagine Dean Wade, going into a timeout, and he just doesn't pay attention for a second. He comes out of the timeout, and he thinks he's Dwayne Wade. And because that's what he was for 1 quarter of his life. We don't even know if that's going to happen again. Because you know the Celtics were bored. You covered 1 million games, and you covered the NBA like this. Even for the great teams you covered, those great Knicks teams, they never dropped one in mid-March when they were going, get us to the playoffs. Of course,
but they never were as bored as I am most nights. We come now to Houston's victory over San Antonio last night. In this game, Houston's 6'11", Alperen Şengün had a career-high 45 points in this his 3rd NBA season. That's notable. More notable is that Şengün was playing against Victor Wembanyama, who got no points at all in the second half, while Şengün got 30. Wembanyama finished with 10. Wilbon, we talk a lot about Wembanyama and Chet Holmgren. Does Şengün deserve to be in that conversation?
Yes, and Tony, he's the same age, although he's been in the league. I think this is his 3rd year in the league. But, Tony, I remember last year being at a game where he had a quarter. We was 12 points, 8 rebounds, and 4 assists. You go, wait a minute. I mean, the Turkish kid, this kid is that good? And the answer was yes. And scouts knew that, scouts around the world. And by the way, you could get me going on this story for a half an hour, because I would tell you this is part of the reason that the NBA doesn't want to put a U.S. versus rest of the world game out there, because there are kids like this, Tony, that American people go, I don't know this guy. How good could he be? Damn good. He might be the most improved player in the league, and he's one of those international players that could take down an American squad, though the American players don't want to hear that either. He's worth watching, Tony. In a few years, he could be on the same trajectory as Joker. He's really, really good.
Yeah. So for the second story today, my word in What's the Word would be lost. I was completely unfamiliar with Mr. Şengün. And to be honest, I don't really pay much attention to a game between two losing teams, a weekday game, two losing teams with 3/4 of the season gone. In the same way that if this was week 13 in the NFL and you told me to pay attention to Tennessee and Carolina, I would say no. So with all due apologies to Mr. Şengün, I did not see this coming. Now, I've learned a lot about him. Should he be in the conversation with Wembanyama? No, and I'll tell you why. That's a conversation about Wembanyama, not even Holmgren. Look, every day on this network and other sports networks, somebody, maybe even you, talks about Wembanyama as being a revolutionary player.
Yeah.
They don't say that about Holmgren, and I'll take the under if you think they say that about Şengün. Last night, the thrust of the game was Wembanyama had nothing in the second half. Şengün was an actor in that game. He had a great night. He averages 21-9, I found out today. I learned a lot. But Wembanyama is on a different plateau, to me.
Tony, this kid may be the most improved player this year. And again, I said similar trajectory to Jokic.
As Joker.
Huh?
I heard.
Similar trajectory. May not get there, but Tony, yesterday you said all of you want to watch Shohei at the plate against the Angels in last night's meaningless spring training game. Well, you then compared the Dodgers to Usher at the Super Bowl. Well, Ohtani struck out twice and fly to center in 3 at-bats. I told you I'd be watching conference tournament basketball instead, which you mocked. And the Atlantic Sun gave us 3 great games, with top seed Eastern Kentucky getting upset by Jacksonville in one of them, Austin Peay's coach celebrating on top of the scorers table in another, and North Alabama beating Lipscomb at the buzzer in a third. Admit it. You made a big mistake. The Atlantic Sun was a lot better than Shohei.
Okay. Honestly, I did not watch 1 minute of the first round of the Atlantic Sun tournament. Going into today, I could not name a single team in the Atlantic Sun conference. And so for the third story today, my What's the Word would be lost.
For the A's.
It would be lost.
Man.
Okay, but hold on. You can cover the A Sun at any point you want to, and you can have people call you up and you can tell them about it. But thank you for mentioning Shohei, because at 8 o'clock I went in front of my television set and I sat down to watch Shohei Ohtani, and I turned on what I thought was the MLB Network, only to find out that I don't subscribe to the MLB Network, so I couldn't watch again. So I sat and I thought about what you said, and if I have it correct, you said, I'm not watching Shohei Ohtani in an exhibition game that doesn't count in the standings. That's meaningless. I'm not watching this junk. I'm watching something that matters, like college basketball and the NBA ball night. That's what you said.
Yeah.
And that's fine. But I want to remind you of something you said last summer.
What?
When you said to me and to the entire world, all you wanted to do last summer was go to Las Vegas and watch Victor Wembanyama in Summer League.
Yeah.
In games that don't count, in exhibition basketball, in total junk that doesn't count in the standings.
Yeah.
And you said to me, and I want to see it because I'm a sports fan and I want to see him. Mike, that's how I feel about Ohtani. That's how I feel.
Tony, I told you the difference is I don't dismiss everything of that nature like you do. I don't dismiss that. You're the one who says I'm never watching exhibition. That's your word. I just told you I'm going to go to Glendale, Arizona next week and watch Ohtani.
See the Dodgers.
Huh? The Dodgers and the White Sox share a facility. I'm going to go sit there in the sun and watch.
Freddie Freeman had a grand slam today.
Okay.
They are Usher. They're the draw. Let's take a break. Coming up, a big night in college basketball tonight. We're going to ask Jay Billis. That's night. That's like twice in the same sentence. Who wrote that? We'll ask Jay Billis what he'll be watching for. I was an English major. Come on.
We'll ask him about Dartmouth's vote to unionize. Tony, you were 0 for the A's. 0 for the A's. You got all the A's wrong.
I'm equating Ohtani and Wembanyama, and you're telling me I'm wrong? A sports fan wants to see them.
You're right. That's true.
We've got a big night in college basketball, which makes it a perfect time to welcome in our great friend and bald brother, ESPN college basketball analyst Jay Billis. Let's start with these games tonight. 4 of the top 6 teams are in action. Number 1, Houston. Number 2, UConn. Number 4, Tennessee. Number 6, Iowa State. You're going to be watching. What are you specifically going to be watching for, Jay?
I think Tennessee will be the most interesting team to watch tonight because they're still fighting for a number 1 seed, and I think they're worthy of it. It's just that Arizona is ahead of them in line right now, and they're going to have to do something to knock Arizona out. And going against South Carolina, a team that beat them at their place earlier this year, Tennessee is so interesting because they're great defensively again. Rick Barnes always seems to have great defensive teams wherever he is, and they're great defensively. But this year, they're better offensively they've been in past years. Part of it is Dalton Knecht, who's the leading scorer in the Southeastern Conference, transferred in from Northern Colorado, and he can go out and get you 39 in any given game. But their experience level is really attractive. Santiago Vescovi and Josiah Jordan-James, those guys have been there 5 years. They're running huddles. I mean, I did their Alabama game the other night. We had a visual of the huddle, and Vescovi's running the huddle with Rick Barnes sitting right next to him. So it's a really good basketball team that I think has a chance to reach a Final Four and maybe better than that. But their offense is so much better this year than it's been in past years, primarily because they can throw it to Knecht and get a bucket almost any time they want.
Jay, as you well know, if it's March, Michigan State becomes a topic at some point or another. The drama's a little different. My Northwestern Wildcats are in East Lansing tonight. It sort of worries me. We've already beaten them once this year. Michigan State in danger of missing the tournament for the first time since 1997. I don't believe that's going to happen. Jay, is whatever's going on fixable with the Spartans? Do you see something serious here? Or do you also see it possible they could be in one of their typical spots for a run like we've seen them do in the past?
I think they can make a run. I agree with you. I think Michigan State's going to make the tournament because their analytics are so good. Their record isn't as good as the analytics tell you the team is. And you guys will remember they were ranked in the top 5 to start the season. And I was one of those thinking that they were going to be among the top 5 all year. So I hesitate to say disappointing. I don't like that. I'm disappointed for them because I think they're better than their record. They don't turn it over. They've got really good guards, but they've been a little bit spotty at the center position. They haven't gotten consistent performances, and they don't rebound the ball the way you expect a Tom Izzo team to rebound. And they don't run the way you expect a Tom Izzo team to run, at least not consistently. But in the tournament, I think they're going to win a first-round game and win a second-round game. I think that's the kind of team that he has, but I don't see him doing anything beyond that. They've just been too up and down. And they're not as powerful in the key areas that they've been, being rebounding. What you always rely on them to rebound, offensive rebound, always rely on that transition game to scare you. And this year, it just doesn't scare you.
Jay, we'll take a detour for a second because Dartmouth's basketball team at 7-21 is not going to be something that we're talking about in relation to the tournament. But it voted to unionize yesterday. This is not the first time we've been down this road. But do you expect this development to really change things? Do you think there's going to be an impact here? What do you think the next step is?
I do, Michael, think there's going to be impact. I think it's another brick that's been taken out of the seemingly collapsing NCAA wall. And it may prompt other private institution teams to take the same step and unionize toward employment. I'm not sure employment is necessary, but Charlie Baker, the president of the NCAA, put out a statement after the unionization vote by the Dartmouth basketball team and said that certain of their issues they cannot deal with without help, meaning without Congress. I disagree with that. Every other American business can help itself by stopping violating federal antitrust law. It's just not that difficult. All the NCAA needs to do is take restrictions off of paying athletes and allow each institution to make their own decisions.
We'll get you out of here on this. We'll ask for a pretty brief answer if we could get one. The Athletic is reporting that the NCAA, which you just talked about, is considering growing the basketball tournament to 72 or 76 teams, partly to keep power conference teams from starting their own tournament. You can see an analogy with the SEC and the Big Ten in the football situation. Do you see this as a legitimate fear?
I do. I see it as a legitimate fear. The NCAA has to do whatever it takes to keep this together. And if the big conferences feel like they're not getting what they want, meaning more teams considered for the NCAA tournament and more access to the tournament, they could take off and start their own thing and start their own tournament, and the NCAA would cease to exist. That's a possibility. I don't think it's probable in the near future, but it's possible. I don't think they should expand the tournament, but it's not going to be the end of the world if they do. We'll consume it the same way. But I think they've got something really good here right now. It should be hard to get into. That's part of the beauty of it, in my view. And I don't look at it as a tournament that's about access. I look at it as a tournament that determines the national champion. I think it's a national championship event. But the middling teams in this big conference, they want more access. And history tells us they're going to get it.
Jay, thanks so much.
Thank you so much,
Appreciate
Jay,
it,
as
man.
always. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's take one last break. Still to come, the Oilers win one. They were on the verge of losing.
How concerned should the Mavericks be about their 3-game losing streak? I agree with every word.
Happy time, people. Happy 41st birthday, Mike McDaniel. The Dolphins coach is 20-14 in his 2 years at Miami. Made the playoffs both years, but went out in the first round to the Chiefs this past season and to the Bills the year before. McDaniel has built his offense around Tua and Tyreek Hill, and when it clicks, it's spectacular. The Dolphins put 70 on the Broncos this season. McDaniel doesn't come from a traditional football background. He was a wide receiver at Yale, which hasn't been a power since Walter Camp coached there in the late 80s, the 1880s. McDaniel started coaching under Mike Shanahan in Denver. He later worked with Kyle Shanahan in Houston, Washington, Atlanta, and San Francisco.
Tony, the Dolphins seem like they've been a lot, even though they're really good over the last, 30 years. They're entertaining in September and October, and then they start to run out of steam and maybe not tough enough.
Yeah.
And I know that's awful to say that about a football team, and maybe not resourceful enough. Maybe McDaniel can change that. Maybe he will.
Happy anniversary, Mike Tyson. On this day 39 years ago, an 18-year-old Tyson made his professional boxing debut in Albany, New York. Tyson's opponent was Hector Mercedes, who should have stayed in the car. Mercedes didn't get out of the first round. Tyson simply went forward, hit him with a barrage of hooks to the body that dropped Mercedes to one knee and made a TKO an easy call. Tyson quickly became heavyweight champion. His overall record was 50-6, with 44 wins by knockouts. 29 of those knockouts were in the first 2 rounds, including one over Michael Spinks, who was light heavyweight champion of the world. Wilbon, you know where I am on Tyson?
I know.
He's the most charismatic athlete I ever saw, and he is a hoot in The Hangover.
Tony, and as you know, we had the good fortune as sports writers for many years to be able to sit and actually exchange and have conversations with Mike Tyson. And people can think whatever they want. I'm just going to say to you, were those conversations not 100% of the time fascinating?
Always.
Great to talk to right now.
Much smarter than people were led to believe.
That's
yes. Right. Happy trails to what looked like a sure win for the Bruins. The Edmonton Oilers won their 5th straight game last night, going on the road to beat the elite Bruins 2-1 in overtime. The Bruins held a 1-0 lead with 1:55 left in the game, when Edmonton's Ryan Nugent-Hopkins made a back check that saved an empty netter for Boston. About 30 seconds later, Leon Draisaitl got the tying goal. In overtime, Draisaitl got the winner off a pass from Connor McDavid. Quote, "I've been doing this for a long time with him," Draisaitl said. Quote, tough team to beat, tough building to play in. They play a playoff-style game every night. Good for us to stick with it," unquote.
As long as we're wishing happy trails in hockey, happy trails to the Blackhawks' 22-game road winless streak. They beat the Coyotes, which could be disastrous for a team looking to get the top pick in the draft for the 2nd straight season. This kid, Macklin Celebrini, Tone, seems to be worth tanking for. I'm just saying.
Well, but you just want the number 1 pick year after year after year.
Yes, but
you had the
had 2
Bears
assists
with
last
the number
night.
1 pick. You know, the Bears had it 2 in a row. They traded out on one of them.
Yep.
Now you want it for the hockey. I'm sure you want it for the Bulls. Enough is enough.
Yes, no,
Why don't you
not
get
enough.
it for Northwestern? Why don't you get the number 1 pick? We're
Okay.
running out of show.
I'll take it.
Let's go to the big finish.
Let's do it.
The Suns beat the Nuggets in OT last night. Is that a big deal?
Yeah, Tony, because the Suns have the toughest schedule left in the league. And to stay out of the play-in, you got to win some tough games. That's a big win last night. Mavericks lost their third straight. Cause for concern?
Yeah, it is. Luka and Kyrie Irving were winning games. Now they've lost 5 out of 6. That is cause for concern. NHL leading Panthers acquired right winger Vladimir Tarasenko from the Senators. Is that significant?
Yeah, Tony, he was with the Blues when they won in 2019, a critical part of that team, and they're already on a roll, and now they add him. The Bills released former All-Pro safety Jordan Poyer. That's going to be a big thing on Instagram, but does it make sense to you?
They're releasing a lot of people on the defense. They have to get under the cap. This is what happens when you have a couple of good seasons and everybody makes money. Can they keep Stephon Diggs is what I want to know. Last one, U.S. women's soccer takes on Canada in the Gold Cup semi tonight. You were geeked for this last week. Who you got?
Tony, I got a front row seat and a clicker. I want to see this game. I'm leaving ball night for a while to go to that other ball, the soccer ball. I want to see this game. U.S. game.
All night. We're out of time. Try and do better the next time. David Sagador, happy birthday.
I'm Mike Wilbon. Same time tomorrow, knuckleheads. You can get the PTI podcast on the ESPN app or Apple Podcasts.